a Florida Writer podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Lana McAra. Lana, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
I am a published author of 43 titles. 16 of those were ghostwritten. They aren't under my own name. And more than 1 million books sold. I won the Christy Award in 2001, and I've won several awards since then. And I teach writing. I've been teaching fiction for 20 years. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell as far as my writing life goes.
All right. So 1 million books sold. What does that feel like?
Feels pretty good. There was a lot of work behind that. Nobody handed me that on a silver platter.
Yeah. So are you a big marketer for yourself, or you have someone that helps you? What's your secret? How do you get your name out?
I am a full-time marketer, basically. Yes. And I teach writers how to do book launches and how to get yourself out there, how to get yourself speaking. So I'm out in the media a lot, on podcasts and on social media and live events as well. I see myself as a person with a message who happens to write books.
And can I ask what your message is?
Well, now, because I had a life change in 2009, now my message is, it doesn't matter how old you are or what your past is. You can reinvent yourself whenever you're ready, because you have more in you than you ever dreamed possible. So let's do it.
Are your books fiction, nonfiction? My
own books are fiction. My ghostwritten books are mostly nonfiction.
So how do you get your, boy, I'm saying so a lot. I apologize to everybody listening. How do you get your message that you can accomplish anything you want into your fiction?
It's actually pretty interesting, because when I teach my fiction course, I have a fiction course called How to Write a Novel That Sells. And the first lesson is about taking your life purpose, your life lessons, and embedding them into your fiction in sneaky little ways so that the reader isn't fully aware that's what you're doing, but yet you can get your message across. And it also gives you somewhere to start when you're doing your public relations and your marketing.
Give me a hint. How does that work?
Well, I had a stalker, for example. Back in 2015, I had a stalker, and it was terrifying. And it lasted for 2 years. It took me 2 years to come through that story. And so during the process, I recognized that this was a major event. It was a big, what I call before and after moment in my life. It wasn't pleasant, but it changed how I look at things, how I handle my home, my security, and so forth. And so I took that seed thought of the stalker, and it took me 5 years to do this. Now I had 5 years to calm down. I needed 5 years to calm down, right? So then I took that seed thought. I created a mystery story about a woman who had a stalker that she didn't know who it was. And this person was damaging her property and doing things to scare her and cost her money. And she couldn't figure out who was doing this. So that's an example of the seed thought, because I knew who my stalker was. It was no mystery to me. And this person was not doing the same kind of damage as her person was. It was a totally different setup, different characters, everything. Nobody in the fiction book was real or even based on truth. So in that way, I could keep it anonymous of, who the person was and my situation, because I didn't want to draw in, the negative legal aspects of of putting that out there. But yet at the same time, the escalation was the same. What the police did was pretty much the same. And so in that way, I could create a teaching moment. This is what happens when you call the police and you have a stalker. And give people the input of how do you protect yourself? Well, you do this and you do that, and you put up cameras and so forth. And that's what the woman in the story did. So that was embedded. It wasn't a moral of the story. It wasn't anything about explaining. It was just a piece of the story. There were other things around it too. There were two mysteries in that story. So that was just a piece of the story, and it was intrinsic. The deeper you can implant it, the better off you are with this kind of thing. And so I always tell my students, go to your before and after moments. When you think of a before and after time in your life, well, that'll pop up. So make a list of them and then pick the one that you would like to explore. And then when you do have your interview, wherever it is about your book, oh yeah, that, I had this happen to me in my life, and tell your real story. And then do what I just did, explain how there's a correlation, but they're not the same. It's a fiction story. It's not real life. And it gives you an in. It gives you something to talk about. And that's crucial when you're writing fiction.
And that's what you call impact-driven space?
Yes, because you're making an impact on people's lives with your story.
That's fascinating. Do you have any tips on other ways you could get your story out there, market yourself?
For fiction, are you mean?
Well, let's stick with fiction.
Okay, yes. So if you embed into your story some interest that you have or a cause that you have. I just did some book coaching on a fiction story where a little girl had cancer. And so this story was fiction. It wasn't this woman's child or grandchild or even a friend. It was fiction. But what she did then, which is really fascinating to me, to be with her in that process, I found it very interesting, was that she contacted two different nonprofit groups, they're large, that deal with children's cancer. And she actually put those two organizations in the book so that the mother went to this group for coaching and counseling. And then she went to this other group to make, believe it or not, burial plans. It was one of those places that has a forest, and you can have a tree where the person's ashes go. They put them in the ground at the foot of the tree, and then they have a plaque, and it's adding into the space, and people come into this beautiful forest, and this is the tree for this child. And it's just a lovely, very lovely group that does it, and a lovely setting. And so she incorporated that into her story, where her mother and the sick daughter, went to the forest, and she chose the tree, and it was just wonderful. It just gave a whole new beauty to the just terrible situation, the horrible situation. But yet she tapped into these, two groups that are making such a beautiful contribution to this place that so many people have to walk through. And it was heartwarming in the book, and it's also heartwarming because she's donating some of the benefits of the book to those groups as well.
Well, that is a beautiful example. You are correct. It's interesting as people toil over their work, which is what really happens, but they don't pre-plan like you're suggesting, which is planting these ideas that you can tap into. Using your example of your client, so she's able to go to those organizations and then say, I would like to share my story with you. And obviously she was giving some money, donating some of the proceeds of the book, which creates a really, the gesture is so warm and personal. But I guess you could do that with just about anything.
Sure. Sure you could. If you're writing action adventure, I mean, you could go to some law enforcement, for families, law enforcement group that helps families of fallen law enforcement agents or whatever, or even EMT groups, that support them, and just help, just bring awareness and make a contribution. That is really awesome because it takes your work to the next level where you're not only giving awareness by putting it in the book, but you're also contributing and encouraging other people to contribute as well.
Yeah, that it really is an interesting way to think about marketing. It becomes less overwhelming. I think writers are often bogged down with the idea that they have to go sell themselves, but they're not selling themselves now. They're actually participating in something that is generous. There's always that reciprocity. When you give first, other people want to give back to you. It comes back. It's the whole idea of, I guess, karma.
Yeah. I love it. It just makes me feel so filled up, to be in a place where most people consider fiction to be just entertainment, but it's so much more than that. And one of the beautiful things about the story about this client of mine, the publisher was also willing to donate a percentage of the profits. So she had two different organizations, herself and the publisher, donating back to these groups. So there's just so much that can happen from just a mindset shift. What do I love and what can I help? And how can I put that in a story in a normal feeling, natural way? So it becomes intrinsic and it doesn't feel salesy at all. It feels like a contribution.
Which is what it is.
Yes.
And people are so willing to purchase something if they know they're going to give part of it away.
Yes. And think of the speaking opportunities now. So many speaking opportunities for that fiction author to talk about this organization that I contribute to and how it impacted and I'm using impact as a verb. I hate that. How it made an impact as, on the story and the characters in the story and so forth. And it just opens doors for you. And with fiction, you absolutely need to think of that. Otherwise, when you go to get public relations, podcasts, interviews, and so forth, you don't have anything to talk about. It's really hard if you don't have anything to talk about.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely. So what are you talking about these days?
Wow. My Stalker book is coming out early next year. So I'm starting to talk about that. And then I'm talking a lot about impact-driven fiction because I have a course on how to write impact-driven fiction. And the conversation that we're having now, I have quite often. The other thing I talk about is starting over after 50. My divorce was in 2009. I was 52 years old. Do the math. And I literally reinvented my life. I changed my name. I moved across the country. I started over after being a stay-at-home mom for all those years and no job resume. And now I'm living a life I absolutely love. So I talk a lot about that. And by the way, I happen to have a book. That's how I usually handle it.
And when did you start writing? Did you start writing at that point?
Oh, no, I had 27 published novels
That's what I thought when you said you without a resume. I was like, well, I thought you had said you had won an award in 2001.
Yes, absolutely. It's not.
So
I
would call that a resume.
No job resume. I had books on, but I didn't have a job. I didn't have a title, or what do you call it? A CV. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's challenging. Writers are an interesting bunch because we can spend so much time by ourselves in an environment with just a keyboard and our imagination, or our imaginary friends, you might call them. Yeah. And it is difficult to balance both working and your creative side unless you really put the effort in to make both work.
Oh yeah, it's really difficult because you feel like you're putting your energy into something that's not your primary interest. It's not your primary thing that you want to do, but you have to make a living. Unless you're somebody like James Patterson, you're not going to make a living at this. This is more like a hobby that you sometimes get paid for. And people have asked me, what would you do if you had all the money in the world and you didn't have to work? I'd write. That's what I want to do. So that is key, really, is to find a way to make a living doing what you love. And I do that by book coaching and ghostwriting and that kind of thing.
Is that when you stepped into ghostwriting?
After my divorce, I couldn't write. I couldn't write anything. I couldn't write my own material for sure. And there was 5 years where I just bounced around from job to job, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was in sales. I did all kinds of things, trying to figure it out. And then in 2012, I met a woman who had an agency that connected people with ghostwriters. And so I connected with her, made an application, and she started sending me jobs. And in 2015, I went full-time ghostwriting. And then I added in book coaching after that. So it was a step-by-step process. And my 5-year healing period, was kind of like the comma in the middle. And it gave me a chance to find my new voice, because my old voice was gone. That's why I couldn't write. I couldn't figure out what my voice was. And so that 5 years gave me time to find that. Yeah.
My dog wandered in the room and she's scratching, which nobody can probably hear, but well, Lana, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about you, your business, your impact-driven fiction?
My website is lanamcara.com. And I'm on Instagram. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, just go to Instagram, Lana McAra with the number 2. And I have a course called How to Write a Novel That Sells at howtowriteanovelthatsells.com.
Well, Lana McAra, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Do you have any favorite pieces of jewelry?
Earrings. Yes, I love crystals. I love all kinds of crystals and earrings. I don't wear necklaces. I wear earrings.
Do you have a vacation bucket list?
Oh, yeah. I would love to go to France. I would love to see it, especially the Mediterranean. That is really one of the things. And I would love to visit the Caribbean again. I lived in the Caribbean 14 years ago, and I would love to go back. The Caribbean is such a beautiful place.
I could look at that blue water all day long.
Absolutely.
Last question. What is your favorite color?
Right now, it's pink. It changes.
Did you see the Barbie movie?
No, I didn't. I don't think cotton candy pink is really the pink I'm after.
There is so much pink these days, I will tell you.
It's a shame I'm not wearing pink right now.
I'm actually wearing pink camouflage pants, but you can't see that.
Okay.
Well, Lana McAra, thanks so much for stopping by. Oh, hold on. You didn't hear me. What happened? Did you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I did. You froze for a second.
Okay. It was like all of a sudden it said, you are muted. I'm like, no, I'm not. All right, let's do this again. Lana McAra, thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. We're all done. Lana McAra is an award-winning international best-selling author and ghostwriter of 43 titles through traditional publishing with 1 million books sold. She won the Christy Award for her historical novel, Reaping the Whirlwind, and her mystery series, Colorado, sold more than 250,000 copies. She has been teaching how to write fiction for 20 years. For more information on Lana McAra, visit her at lanamacara.com. For more information on the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.